This is Garmin's answer to the Apple Watch Ultra, and after wearing it for the past 2 weeks, let me tell you, this is either going to be the best Garmin watch of all time or the worst Garmin watch of all time. There's just so much different about this watch, and it really depends on what you value. So in this video, I'll share my observations, do a deep dive into the accuracy, test the speakers and the microphone, show the interface and all the new features, and ultimately decide who should actually buy the Garmin Venue X1. And this is a genuine flagship watch from Garmin, unlike the previous Venue devices. So for those who are confused by Garmin's very confusing lineup, allow me to quickly summarize. You have the Phoenix devices for the forest and mountain people. You have Forerunners for athletes, and the Venue series for pretty much just everyday health and fitness tracking. Now, you might think, great, okay, the Venue is probably going to be the most common watch, the most easy to recommend in the Garmin lineup. You might think it should do pretty much everything except some really specific advanced features for mountaineering or diving or maybe compatibility with night vision goggles. Oh, that's where you're wrong. Before this new Garmin Venue X1, Garmin really neutered the Venue lineup. The Venue 2, for example, didn't even have open water swimming. The Venue 3 still doesn't have multi-sport mode, so it can't be used for even the shortest sprint triathlon. In fact, Garmin once told me they do not expect Venue wearers to run more than 6 miles per week with a $450 Garmin watch. They're awesome watches, don't get me wrong, but I was just always frustrated that Garmin seemed to exclude some awesome features on the Venue lineup for apparently no reason. And that mostly ends now with the Garmin Venue X1. So finally, Garmin has come to their senses, made a true flagship, and the Venue X1 has essentially all the features I wanted that were missing on previous devices. A VO2 max, HRV, multi-sport features, and ultimately, I think it has the potential to be the best Garmin watch for the most people. Now, before I get into those new features and the accuracy testing, which I think you may find as surprising as I did, let's go through the honestly controversial design. I'll start off with the positives, then we'll talk about some negatives. The positives, as you can kind of tell from looking at this, it is incredibly light. That's thanks to the fiber reinforced polymer body with the titanium caseback. Like, this thing is just so incredibly light. It's hard to show that on camera, but it's easy to forget it's even on your wrist. It's also unbelievably thin, just 8 millimeters thick for the case, and somehow still with an 8-day battery life, despite the gigantic display and very, very compact, thin body. I found the battery life, by the way, was longer than 8 days. I went from Friday at noon until Sunday at 6 a.m., so that's about 8.75 days if I did the math right on that, which I think is very impressive. I was using it absolutely all the time. Like every day I was using GPS, I was looking at it a lot, like the brightness was all the way up, so the battery life, very, very solid on this. The display, as I mentioned, is also gigantic. Like, it is even larger than pretty much any watch I've used. The Apple Watch Ultra for size reference next to it. You can see just how massive this 2-inch display is. It's scratch-resistant sapphire, and I find the main benefit, even though some may consider it a drawback to be such a large display, the positive is that when you're working out, glancing at your wrist has never been easier. Like, I can see all of my metrics, like when I'm swimming, running, whatever. This is a huge positive in my opinion. It's also very bright, very colorful. It's an AMOLED display, and there's an optional always-on display, which totally destroys your battery life, brings it from like 9 days down to about 2 days. So I always leave that off. It just, when you lift your wrist, it wakes up automatically. And much like the Epics, we now have a flashlight on the top, which can be useful if you're like in the middle of the night, you want to go to the bathroom. There's a red mode, so it doesn't blind you. But anywhere else, I find that I use this all the time. In addition, if you're biking or if you're running, there's a strobe mode on here, so you're more visible at night. And on the sides, you can see a microphone and a speaker, as well as 2 buttons. We'll talk about what those do in a minute. And on the backside, we have our typical Garmin charger and the health sensor array that I'll talk about in a second. But the downsides of this design, you're gonna see, if you haven't already seen it in the comments yet, I know people are gonna be saying this, there are major downsides. One, if you see somebody wearing an Apple Watch, what do you think? For me, it's nothing really specific, just kind of a normie watch. Like, everyone gets the Apple Watch. But if you see someone wearing a Garmin, I think athlete, they probably have cool stories. And the point is, Garmin watches are kind of a statement. They're an identity for a lot of people. And this doesn't look like a Garmin watch, even though it is a Garmin watch. Personally, I think circular watches look a little bit better, and I would rather have more buttons on here. Just 2 buttons is even fewer than we had on the previous Garmin Venue device. It's also only rated for 5 atmospheres of water resistance, which is fine for most swimming, but others are rated for 10 atmospheres, so not quite the same rating there. Also, there's only one size available, absolutely huge. There's no smaller one, so if you have smaller wrists, you can wear this, but it's gonna look a little big on your wrist. And I think ultimately, I'm starting to like the design more and more now that I have it. Like, functionally, it's a pretty solid design, but the look of it, like, I can't get over that. To me, it looks like a cheap Temu Apple Watch knockoff with kind of uglier software, especially since I think like the Epics and so many other devices just look so awesome in my opinion. Just look at these side by side. That's kind of a big difference in my opinion. But if you can get over the aesthetics, it really is a beast of a watch. Like, let's talk about accuracy, for example. Starting off with the heart rate sensor, this is the Elevate Gen 5 optical sensor cluster, just like we see on all the other flagship Garmin watches. And in summary, like this graph pretty much shows it all. It is very, very accurate. I compared it to the Polar H10 ECG heart rate strap running intervals, and these are typically impossible for most watches out there. They struggle so much with these, and this is pretty much lockstep. You can see in the beginning, it was a little bit slow to come down from the first interval. The second interval was a slight delay, but after that, it was basically dead on for the entire time I was working out. Also, if we go over to a walk, something a little bit slower, your heart rate doesn't vary nearly as much, so any differences are more exaggerated here. And again, slight delay in the very beginning, a little bit of a lag there. You can see red is the Garmin, and then otherwise pretty much dead on for the rest of that workout. Also, I'll be showing this map a lot more. I made this cool little website to compare files. So if you guys have like a TCX, a GPX, or a .fit file, maybe I'll share a link to this totally free. I just made this website for fun. And it's kind of a cool way to show how similar things are. Oh, also, I didn't even mention this. The R squared value is shown on the top here. So I calculated the R squared value, and you can see incredibly high. So very, very similar numbers on these two heart rate sensors. Moving on to the GPS, this is where I said that you might be as surprised as I am to find out that this doesn't have dual band GPS. Dual band GPS is something we see in many, many high-end watches. It gives you increased accuracy, but somehow Garmin managed to get some pretty incredible accuracy without dual band GPS on this. So looking at this is kind of an easier test, just open sky, like no blockages at all. I was on the Aran Islands, and you can see it is very, very accurate. You can see exactly where the roads were. And if we go up here, you can even see I was riding on the left side of the road. This is in Ireland, so that's how you drive there. And same thing when you're riding a bike. So I was riding around. You can see where I stopped. You can see where I went into this little shop to use the bathroom. You can see literally everything. This did a great job. There's only one point in this trip that was not particularly accurate, and that is over here where I stopped. I walked around a little bit. I did walk over here, but on the other side, it jumped around occasionally. I didn't go over in that field. So that's the only error I found in this entire, I think this is like 17 or 18 miles that I was riding my bike on this island here. If we go to, I did another test, a much shorter test, only about a mile, in a deep little canyon, and this is a lot tougher. This is where dual band GPS really shines, and yet it still did a really good job. So you can see Forbidden Drive is what I was riding on, and it was pretty much exactly on that the entire time. Slight cut corner here, but again, that could be a map error. I would go to satellite view, but let me show you guys. Satellite view, it's really tough to see with all the tree cover where the trail actually is. But again, I pretty much was on the trail there. Over here, the only difference that I noticed is I went up this little side trail and turned around, and I did go up and back the same trail, but you can see a little bit of a gap there. So maybe a difference of like 10 feet on the GPS. Otherwise, I'm just really impressed. I'm very surprised actually at how accurate this is, given that it doesn't have dual band GPS. As far as swim tracking goes, by the way, this is Garmin Connect. You can use obviously your phone to connect to the watch and see all your analytics there, or what I really like is seeing it on a laptop. So if you look at a swim, like I was able to see a lot of information here. It was very, very accurate on lap tracking. So every lap, it just perfectly nailed it. My distance was perfectly accurate. Sometimes other watches, if you swim like 2200, it might say like 2125, or it might miss a couple half laps here and there. And I find that that is something that we don't experience with this watch at all. And unlike the previous Venue devices, we have a lot of new features in here, like swim workout options, including critical swim speed and other things like that I'll talk about later. This also has all the typical health tracking stuff, including nap detection, stress tracking, heart rate, blood oxygen, everything with your sleep tracking. What I really like that so many other watches are honestly struggling to copy that Garmin does well. Two things. One is your body battery. So depending on how you slept, how you worked out, your recovery, it'll give you like a score throughout the day of how much energy you really have left. I find that that's kind of useful if you're like, all right, I'm thinking about doing a workout and you want to know how hard to push yourself. That can be a good indicator. Also, when you're traveling, it can be a really good indicator of just like generally how much extra you have to sleep, or if you're at risk of maybe getting sick or something like that. And the second thing is the morning report. Again, so many other companies are trying to copy this and really mostly failing. So every morning you wake up, if you have this enabled, it'll tell you like the weather, what's going on today, how well you slept, and different things like that. This, much like the flagships, also has evening redshift as well. So later in the day, the display turns red, a little bit easier in the eyes when you're getting ready for bed. If you have an Android device, this has on-wrist texting. If you don't have an Android device, you can still get notifications. You just won't be able to reply with iPhones. This also has 32 gigs of storage, great for maps, offline music, because you can connect Spotify and earbuds to this and go for a run without your phone. And this does have some other cool features like voice notes, training readiness, training status, VO2 max, altitude acclimation. So these are things we've seen on like the Epics and many other watches in the past. Endurance score, hill score. You can load a race on here. So if you're training for a race, it'll give you a prediction of what your race time might be and countdown for when the race starts. There's also Garmin Share, so you can like send a course between two watches before you start going. And there's also a lot of sport profiles on here. I mentioned multi-sport was a new one. There's I think over 100 sport profiles on this watch. And it's not like some other watches where each one just shows you like the time and it's really generic. They add like badminton or something. Nothing against badminton. But this actually has a lot in each sport, so it really is tailored to that, and I think Garmin spends a lot of time on those. There's also a lot of sensor support, so e-bikes, foot pods, extended displays, golf clubs, other external heart rate sensors. A lot you can connect to this as like a central hub for tracking your workouts. There's also jet lag advisor. There's Garmin Pay. I got some beef with Garmin Pay though. It's pretty limited on what banks are participating. So like I'll include a link down below. You can check out which ones there are, but a lot of credit cards don't work with Garmin Pay. There's heat acclimation, of course. So in the summer, if you're running a lot in the heat, it'll tell you like how well you're acclimated to the heat. I guess the goal is to get to 100 before your race, so you're ready to go even if it's a hot day. There's focus modes on here. There's Climb Pro, so that's beneficial if you're biking and you have like ascents and descents. It can kind of, tell you when the upcoming hills are so you know how much gas is in the tank. A drawback with this is that this doesn't have LTE. So if you are planning on going anywhere without your phone and you're worried about like fall detection or something like that, that is definitely a drawback. It doesn't have LTE. Not that it's related at all, but it does have golf. This is something that I didn't see. Garmin was always very specific about which ones had golf, which ones didn't. Even like the Epics, I think it was like $1,000 for the Epics, didn't have golf on there. But this has a lot of golf tracking. It's honestly a huge feature, and I could see a lot of people buying this watch specifically to use for the golf features. It pairs with rangefinders, it pairs with club sensors, it gives you like the map of each hole, and there's really a lot of interesting stuff you can do with this, especially being that it's such an accurate GPS, kind of a fantastic tool to have on a smartwatch. And the very slim profile of this watch means that your wrist is not going to smash into any buttons if you bend your wrist back, and the sleeves or gloves or whatever you're wearing really won't be a problem. Like, you won't be interfering with the watch. It's just a really slim profile on your wrist, but it's not perfect. There are some things missing on here. Like I said, LTE. This also has no ECG, which is really surprising to me. No dual band GPS. It doesn't have impact load, running economy, running tolerance, and it doesn't have the same waterproofing you might have on some other devices, as I mentioned earlier. But kind of showing you the UI right now, you have the home screen right here. You can swipe down to go to notifications, and the notifications are in great color, great detail, unlike most other Garmin devices. And this is where it feels most like a smartwatch. If you swipe up from the bottom, you can see all your normal kind of your stack right here. You can tap into any of them, the weather, for example, the sunrise and sunset, and really interact with any of those. If you swipe from the left, at least for me right now with the current settings, absolutely nothing happens. Swiping from the right, you get into pretty much anything you want to do with this watch. You've got your workouts, your map, phone, music, clocks, calculator. The calculator is a cool new addition on here. Voice notes, so if you want to remember something, just do that. Watch face, which is weirdly not in settings, it's right here, and you can't just tap and hold on the watch face. You have to go here to change that. You also have history, wallet, snapshot, or health snapshot. You can check out your stocks, Garmin shares down here, and on the very top, if you tap on activities, this is where you can get into all of your activities, and you can save your favorite ones on the top. You can go down to more and have an entire list that's categorized. So like racket sports, you can go down and find pickleball, paddleball, racquetball. There's a lot of those. You get the point. But let's get into a microphone and a speaker test. I mentioned you can use this for phone calls or for voice notes, of course.
All right, so this is a phone call sample to hear what the speaker would sound like on this watch. Let me know how this sounds to you, if you think you can answer a call like this, and ultimately if you think the speaker is good enough. All right, now this is a microphone test. If I were to answer a phone call using the watch and you were on the other end of the line, it would probably sound something like this. So let me know how the microphone sounds. Again, this is also going to be used for voice notes and anything else on the watch that would require a voice.
In conclusion, this is a really tough watch to review. Like I said, it's either going to be the best watch ever for you or the worst watch ever for you. This isn't like the old Venues, which were $449 and kind of just a middle-of-the-pack Garmin watch. This is $799, definitely intended to go head-to-head with the Apple Watch Ultra. And if you want me to make a comparison between this and the Apple Watch Ultra, leave a comment down below. If I get enough comments, I will do that. I think that could be an interesting video. But finally, Garmin gave a Venue watch a lot of flagship features and kind of brings us up to par with other Garmin flagship devices, but also made it incredibly thin, incredibly lightweight, and they gave it a nice titanium back. I definitely miss the buttons and the longer battery life of something like the Garmin Epics, but I don't miss how chunky and thick that watch was, especially if you're wearing long sleeves. So on one hand, unfortunately, this cuts out some of Garmin's strengths like dual band GPS, better style, lots of buttons, but on the other hand, this is slimmer. It includes some smartwatch features like calling and texting. It's versatile and well-rounded, and it's really kind of a nice meet in the middle between the Forerunner and the Phoenix. So in conclusion, I think this is a fantastic watch for a lot of people. It's not for everybody, but for me personally, if I wasn't filming videos with this watch and making comparisons, I think I would probably switch back to my Garmin Epix Pro Gen 2, mostly because I like the buttons and I like round watches, but that's a personal preference there. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of this watch. Is it the right price? Is it the right design? And are the features enough for you to justify this price? Thanks for watching. I'm Mike, and I'll see you in that next video.